Alrighty, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Made to Pray podcast. You're joining us on a bonus episode this time around for the start of a series that's called Tunes That Change the Scene. And I'll get into a wee bit more about what that is in a minute or two. So just want to say thank you to everybody who has been joining us on the podcast that we've been releasing recently. I know there's been quite a lot of views there, which we really appreciate, and we hope that continues, and looking forward to putting more your way. You'll see this looks a wee bit different this time around because I'm just recording this episode on my own, and obviously it was the 1st of July last night, and we usually record on a Monday night, so I'm just sitting doing this on my own. In terms of the YouTube channel, it'd be great if you could like the video, if you could comment on it, and also if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel. Subscribing to the channel is free, and all it does is helps us with the algorithm on YouTube to make sure that more people who may be interested in the kind of content that Made to Pray creates actually get this promoted to them. So if you could do that, I would really appreciate it. And one of the things that we're looking to do is, because we're about 180 or so subscribers away from hitting the 1,000 mark, we thought we'd run a wee bit of a competition for that. What we're going to do is we're going to track everybody that subscribes over the next month or so. And the person that ends up being the 1,000 subscriber will then receive a goodie bag from Made to Pray, which will have band merchandise, Made to Pray merch, and a few pieces of, believe it or not, maybe band history, things that you might be really interested in, and we'll release more about that on the next episode. So there's a wee incentive for you to get subscribing. So on to this sub-series, which is called Tunes That Change the Scene. Now, initially I was going to do this on calling it Recordings That Change the Scene, and maybe focusing in on some old tapes and albums and things that were recorded by bands that had a major influence on the scene. And that may be something that we do on down the line, maybe almost like a retrospective review of some of those recordings. But for this particular series, I'm going to pick out some tunes from bands from years back that for me changed the scene in some shape or form, and we'll go through that. So the way that this is going to work is I'm going to talk to you a wee bit about the band that we're going to feature on this very first episode of Tunes That Change the Scene. And then what we'll do is we'll listen to the tune that I've picked out, and then I'll give you some reasons as to why I picked that particular tune. And there may be some surprises in this series for people, and that's great. And it'll be good for you if you want to nominate a tune that you think changed the scene. By all means, get involved with the comments, send us something through, and we'll look into doing a video on that particular tune. If it's not one we've picked out already, and you'll know that there'll be a vast amount of tunes that we can actually be looking at. So for this very first episode of the Tunes That Change the Scene, we're going to focus in on what I think is a band and a recording that had a major impact on the scene. For some of you who are listening there, you're probably already thinking the name of this band, or at least some of you may be anyway. And it's the Blackskull in Glasgow. And they released this album, good grief, way back in, 84 or something like that there. I'm sure somebody will correct me on that, but I remember getting a hold of this album in secondary school. It was doing the rounds with all the guys in my class who were in flute bands. We all wanted to get a copy of this, and I know this was also released on LP. For some of you, you may not have a clue what that is, but a 12-inch record version of this was available, and anybody who has this has a real collector's item on their hand. But whenever this album came out, whenever this recording made an appearance, it really did make a massive impact on the band scene. Lots of bands started to change their style, started to adopt a lot of the the approaches that the Blackskull were taking, even in regards to uniforms and how they were, carrying drums and their drum settings and everything like that. There, this really did have a massive impact. There's lots of tunes on here that I could pick out and probably will over the duration of this wee sub series, and just to highlight just how many of those are there. But the one that I've picked out for this particular episode is The Great Escape. And now some of you may be going, really, Glenn? There might be other ones like the jigs and all that kind of stuff there that might have been a bit more, you might have thought I'd have picked one of those rather than this. But it's the lead off track on this actual recording. And for me, it kind of sets the tone for what's to come after it. And for me, that means, that makes it important. And it makes it a tune that changed the scene, because while there may have been a few bands playing this particular tune prior to this recording and being released, and I know that looking back that the Ballyhalbert Followers of Rangers album has The Great Escape on it as well. But for the majority of people, as I know for me as a young person, I hadn't heard too many bands playing this. So whenever I heard this, I was like, oh, wow, what's this? The film theme tune being covered by a flute band and doing such a great job of it. So even as I'll get into the ins and outs of this one after we listen to it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to just mute my microphone in a wee second or so, and we're going to play the tune, and we're going to listen to it, and then all I'm going to do is give you some of my thoughts and stuff after that, and then look at some of the other tunes that may be coming up in the future there as well. So here we go with the Blackskull playing The Great Escape. There you go. Still a wee toe tapper after all these years. God, that takes me back. I'm always sitting here trying to remember the first time that I would have actually listened to that, and just listening to that drum intro. And I think that's maybe when I'm picking out maybe sort of 3 or 4 points about why this particular tune has made me pick it out as one that's changed the scene. Probably for a start off is the drum intro. While bands at that stage were, whenever this came out and before, they were starting to play around with their drum intros. For a long period of time, most bands would have had a very straightforward introduction from the drums before the flutes or their accordions, whatever, kind of kicked in. But this tape, this recording was the first time you'd heard bands with lots of different types of drum intros, and the one that on the start of this one is almost a classic, and it's kind of been replicated and then expanded on by bands as they've went on and tried to, as they took the influence from this and tried to create their own. It was amazing even hearing, bands that would have copied this stuff directly. It was the drum intro was the same, the flute setting, the drum setting was exactly the same. Bands really took to this, and adopted these tunes and the approach into their repertoire. So for me, the drums play a major part, and especially the introduction there as well. The other thing I think that maybe stands out for me, well, not maybe stands out for me on this one, is having listened to some recordings prior to this one coming out, was there was always a wee bit of a question mark around the tuning of flutes. I listened to some older recordings and the flutes maybe a wee bit out of tune or whatever else. That could have been just even the tape or the whatever, but there was the odd time you'd have been listening to stuff and going, there's maybe one out of tune there or something's just not right there. But this for me was one of the first recordings that I heard that you just didn't get that. You just didn't hear those kind of differences. There wasn't, and as far as I can recall, there's very few mistakes, if any, that you can actually hear on this recording. So I think that was another thing that kind of stood out for me, was just the quality of the playing, both in the drums, but also on the flutes. Now, in regards to how they recorded this, I'm not 100% sure how the Skull recorded this. Well, this was a full band or a small collection of flute players that were brought together to do that, because I know some bands did that. They only brought a small amount of flute players into the recording environment, and that helped them, I suppose, with the idea of tuning and making sure that people were all playing the same parts. But however that works, or however that was for this particular recording, for me, that's something else that really stands out. The flutes sound absolutely amazing, and even just the way that it's mixed as well. The bass drum's quite strong, you can still hear all the drums, and the flutes are very much at the fore as well. So for me, the sound of the flutes on this here was something else that really stood out for me. And then I suppose a third thing would have been, again, relating to the drums. So in the third section of The Great Escape, it's probably one of the first times that I'd heard a drum corps actually using triplets within a tune. That usually was the domain of the pipe band in terms of hearing that. But for me, this was one of the first times that I'd heard a flute band actually using the triplets in their drum setting. And I suppose the other thing with the drum setting is it was one of the first times that there was a lot of, for me, hearing a lot of change up in regards to how that drum setting was. Usually you would have had a particular rhythm or a pattern that was being used, and it was just repeated, and then you had certain things with rules and things at the end. But this really, the Skull really, changed it up on this recording. You can hear that in this one, just in terms of the way the drum setting is put across and arranged and stuff. You can hear all those different elements, and I suppose that started to give bands license, I suppose, to go and play around with their drum settings, and I suppose their flute arrangements as well. With that, and that's something that goes on throughout this particular recording, the whole way through this album. You hear that, and then obviously that progresses even more whenever the second recording that the Blackskull done, and that'll be something that will feature on Tunes That Change the Scene as well. A number of tunes from that second recording that really kind of took the Blackskull to another level in regards to what they were doing there. So there's three things for me that really make this tune stand out. And as I say, lots of bands then took this particular thing on board and started to add it to their repertoire. And then you got an explosion of bands that were actually playing this tune. And the other thing is that it's still being used today. Now, it may not be played exactly the way that it's played on this. I don't know, in the band that I play in, we have a version of The Great Escape now with parts and all stuff, piccolos and all that kind of thing, and lots of bands have that there. But I think for me, the fact that it's in the actual repertoire of the band scene starts here with this recording, and a lot of bands, as I say, then took it on board, and it's still a major part of the band scene now. So I think that's I suppose for me that really sums up a tune that changed the scene, is that the fact that it came into the scene and it's still being utilized and being used even now, even if it is in a slightly different format. So I think that's a great way of just maybe ending the commentary on that particular tune there. So there we go. The very first tune that's featured here on Tunes That Change the Scene on Made to Parade is the Blackskull Flute Band from Glasgow and their version of The Great Escape. So absolutely fantastic there. So, and if your band doesn't play it, maybe it's something you'll want to add in going forward. It's not that hard to play, and if you're looking at the notes for it, give us a shout, and I'll drop them in a post for you. You can grab them from there. All right, so we're going to be doing this on a regular basis, so we are going to potentially maybe have one or two of these, maybe more, as we go through the next lot of seasons with the podcast. And as I say, give me your shouts on what you think are tunes that change the scene. So I know coming up we'll have some tunes from Pride of the Mail. There's a surprise, me mentioning Pride of the Mail. We'll also have tunes from Glen Mavis as well, and then we'll also be looking at some of like the Blues and Royals from Bales Hill as well. We'll be looking at some of those, and also the likes of the Sons of Ulster from Glasgow as well. So lots to look forward to on this. So short episodes, nothing major in regards to content length and all that there, but just something to get us going and think about some of those tunes, have a wee bit of nostalgia, and also just think about the impact that these tunes and these bands have had even now, in 2024. So folks, that's all for now. A short episode, as I say. Make sure you join us on the next episode of the Made to Parade podcast. That'll be coming out very soon. You may find a wee bit of a gap between some of the episodes, with it being July, and but we're hoping to have also an episode with Pride of the Shore coming up. We're going to talk to them about them being involved in a play. Looking forward to getting that one out. And as I said, we're also then having some conversations with other bands and other people from within the community to have them on talking about subjects that will be of relevance to all of the Made to Parade listeners, viewers, etc. So folks, that's it for the very first of the sub-series on Tunes That Change the Scene. Hope you enjoyed that, and I look forward to hearing from you in regards to your suggestions for this, and look forward to creating more of these episodes for you in the future. So, as always, until the next episode, look after yourselves and take it easy.